The first thing I saw was the balloons. Big silver letters floating in our lobby. Welcome, Evan. Like we were launching a new product, not burying the person who kept payroll from bouncing. I walked in with my binder, vendor concessions, emergency cash flow plan, proof of the last-minute deal I'd closed at 11:47 p.m., and there he was. Evan Pierce. 24. Perfect hair. The kind of smile that said he'd never had to beg anyone for anything. My boss, Graham Pierce, clapped him on the shoulder like a proud coach. Then Graham turned to me, all warmth and teeth. "Diane," he said, "we're making a change. Evan's taking over operations." My mouth opened before my brain caught up. Operations? As in my job? Graham's smile didn't move. "It's what's best for the company." And just like that, the air in the lobby felt thinner. The balloons bobbed cheerfully above us, mocking the moment. I had spent 2 years pulling this company back from the edge of bankruptcy, negotiating with vendors who wanted to walk away, convincing our bank to give us one more chance. And now I was being replaced by someone whose biggest accomplishment was probably his college fraternity presidency. Evan held his hand out to me. "No hard feelings, right?" I stared at his hand like it was a trick. If I didn't shake, I'd be difficult. If I did, I'd be signing away my own dignity. So I shook it. His palm was soft, no calluses, no ink stains, no late-night coffee tremors. He leaned in slightly, voice low enough that only I could hear. "I've heard you're intense," he murmured, still smiling, "but don't worry, I'm here to modernize." Modernize, that word people use when they mean replace. Graham cleared his throat. "HR will walk you through the transition." I looked past him to the framed photos on the wall, company anniversaries, ribbon cuttings. I was in half of those pictures, standing 2 feet behind Graham, holding the plans no one else understood. I swallowed. "What's my role now?" Graham didn't even blink. "We'll figure it out." Figure it out. Like my 6 years of work were just loose ends to tie up later. I noticed our receptionist Jenna, watching from her desk, her face a mixture of shock and sympathy. She'd been here almost as long as I had. She knew what I'd done for this place. Behind me, I heard the soft click of HR's office door opening. Amanda stood there, folder already in hand, her expression carefully neutral. "My name is Diane Moore. I'm 46 years old. I have a mortgage, a grown son in college, and a reputation for being the woman you call when the wheels come off. I don't cry at work. Not because I don't feel things, because I do. I feel everything. I just learned a long time ago that tears get labeled unstable. 2 years ago, when Graham's company started sinking, I didn't leave. I stayed. I thought loyalty mattered. I'd been operations director for 6 years. I knew every vendor, every client weakness, every cash leak. I knew where the bodies were buried, and I had the spreadsheets to prove it. So when HR said, "This is a restructuring," I almost laughed. Because I just watched my job get handed to a kid with a balloon bouquet. I followed Amanda into her office, my legs moving on autopilot. The familiar hallway suddenly felt foreign, like I was seeing it through different eyes. The motivational posters on the walls, "Teamwork makes the dream work. Innovation starts here," felt like cruel jokes now. Amanda gestured to a chair and sat across from me, the desk between us like a barrier. She slid a folder toward me, and my name was already on it. Transition Plan, Diane Moore. The folder looked clean, professional, like a polite lie. Inside, a new title, Operational Support Lead. Same work, less authority, less pay, no direct reports. HR, Amanda, kept her voice gentle. "It's temporary. Temporary is what people say when they want you to accept something permanent without fighting." I pointed to the pay line. "This is a demotion." Amanda smiled with sympathy. "I didn't trust. It's an adjustment." I asked the only question that mattered. "Why Evan?" Amanda hesitated, a flicker, the smallest crack. "Graham wants someone he can build with." Meaning, someone who won't challenge him. I closed the folder slowly. My hands were steady, but my stomach felt like it was falling. The numbers on the page blurred slightly. A 30% pay cut. 30%. That was my son's tuition. That was my ability to keep my house. "Okay," I said. "I'll need this in writing." Amanda nodded too fast. "Of course." I stood, folder in hand, and walked back toward my office. My feet knew the path. I'd walked it thousands of times over 6 years. But when I reached my door and swiped my keycard, the light flashed red. I tried again. Red. I swiped again. Red light. Again. Red. I stood there with my laptop bag cutting into my shoulder like the building itself had decided I didn't belong. A security guard I'd known for years shifted awkwardly nearby. Diane? They told us your access changed." "Changed," I repeated, like it was normal for your job to evaporate in the hallway. I walked to IT, my heart pounding harder with each step. The IT guy, Miles, wouldn't meet my eyes when I approached his desk. "I'm sorry, request came through this morning. Evan's name was on it." Evan's name. It hit me in a different place then. Not anger, not yet. Humiliation. My computer still sat on my desk like I'd left it for lunch. Family photo, sticky notes, my emergency checklist taped to the monitor. But my email was logged out, my files were restricted. Like I was the danger, I felt my face flush. Other employees walked past, their eyes sliding away from mine. They knew, they'd probably known before I did. Miles cleared his throat. "I can get you temporary access, but it'll take a few hours." My phone buzzed in my pocket, an all-staff email notification. I pulled it out and read the subject line, "Exciting leadership changes." From Evan Pierce. Evan's email read like a motivational poster. "Excited to lead operations into the future. Looking forward to streamlining processes, driving innovation, and bringing fresh perspective to our amazing team. Big changes coming. Let's embrace them together." I watched coworkers read it on their screens, faces carefully blank. Some gave me that look people give when they're glad it's not them. He called a meeting an hour later. I walked in and there it was. My seat at the table was gone. The chair removed entirely, like they didn't even want the symbol of me. Evan stood at the front with a clicker and a bright smile. "First," he said brightly, "we're going to overhaul vendor contracts. We're paying too much." I felt my jaw tighten. Those vendor contracts were the only reason we were alive. I raised my hand calmly. "We renegotiated those last quarter to avoid default penalties. Changing them will trigger early termination fees that could cost us." Evan cut me off with a grin. "Love the passion, Diane, but let's keep it positive, okay?" I heard a couple nervous laughs around the table. Graham sat back, arms folded, pleased, like he just watched his nephew win a game. None of them understood what those contracts meant, the hours of negotiation, the trust I'd built. After the meeting, Evan stopped me in the hall. "I'll need your vendor list by end of day." I stared at him. "You mean the vendor list I built over 6 years?" He smiled wider. "Exactly. You'll be a huge help during the transition." Transition. Another polite word for use you until you're gone. That afternoon I opened my notebook, the old-fashioned kind, and started writing down everything I knew I'd need. Dates, times, emails, meetings, anything said in a hallway, not to be petty. To protect myself. I'd seen this before at other companies, the slow push-out. The gradual erosion of authority until you quit on your own, saving them severance costs. At 6:12 p.m., Evan emailed again. Subject line, urgent. Need full vendor concessions history, all communications, and renegotiation terms. Tonight. I'd spent months building trust with those vendors. I'd done it with calm, honesty, and a little pride swallowing when we couldn't pay on time. And now Evan wanted it handed to him, like a family heirloom. I looked at the email for a long moment, then typed one sentence back. "Happy to provide documentation tomorrow during business hours." My finger hovered over the send button. Then I hit send. My phone rang immediately. Graham's number lit up the screen. "Diane," Graham said, voice low. "Don't make this hard." I looked at my dark office window, my reflection staring back, eyes sharper than I felt. "I'm not making anything hard," I said. "I'm setting boundaries." He laughed once, not humor. Warning. "Boundaries don't keep companies alive," he said. "Loyalty does." Loyalty. The same loyalty I'd used to skip vacations, miss my son's school events, stay late while Graham golfed with clients. I kept my voice even. "I've been loyal for 6 years. I'm not available after hours unless that's in my contract." Silence. "Then, you're not in a position to negotiate." My heartbeat didn't change, my pride did. "I saved this place," I said quietly. "And we're grateful." He replied like a practiced line. "Don't ruin it with ego." Ego. The word men use when women ask for what they've earned. I ended the call with a soft, professional goodbye. Then I sat at my desk in the growing darkness and let the anger bloom. Not messy, not explosive, the kind that focuses you. I opened my laptop and started copying files to my personal drive, not company secrets. My work, my notes, my strategies. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Diane, You need to see what Evan's saying about you. Jenna sent a screenshot from a private team chat. Evan had typed, Diane's been overwhelmed lately. She's talented, but we need energy and adaptability. Change is hard for some people. Overwhelmed. That's the word they use when they want to soften the knife. Like my competence was a mood swing. Under it, someone replied, hope she's okay. Another, change is hard. No one said, she saved us. I stared at the messages until my eyes burned. Then I did something I'm proud of. I didn't respond. I didn't send a group text. I didn't call anyone crying. I didn't go to HR begging for fairness. I took a screenshot, saved it, timestamped it. Then I called my friend Marissa, an employment attorney I'd met years ago through a consulting project. She answered on the second ring. Marissa, I need your help. I quickly explained everything, the firing, the demotion, the narrative Evan was building. She listened without interrupting, then said, Diane, this sounds like constructive dismissal. They're creating conditions to force you out. I don't want revenge, I told her. I want my dignity intact. Marissa paused. Then we document, quietly, perfectly, everything. The next morning, HR scheduled a meeting. The subject line made my stomach turn. Performance alignment, Diane Moore. The phrase performance alignment made my skin crawl. I walked into HR with my notebook and a calm face. Amanda was there, Graham was there, Evan was there, and on the table sat a printed list. Concerns, Amanda said gently. I read them slowly. Concern number 1, resistance to change. Concern number 2, lack of availability. Concern 3, negative tone in meetings. I felt my jaw lock. They weren't just pushing me out, they were rewriting the story so it would look like my fault. I looked at Graham. Is this because I wouldn't work unpaid after hours? Graham's eyes stayed flat. It's because you're not a team player right now. Evan chimed in, voice sweet. We want you to succeed, Diane. We really do. I nodded slowly, like I was listening carefully. Then I opened my notebook. I'd like all concerns in writing, I said calmly, with specific examples, dates, and the company policy they violate. Amanda blinked. Evan's smile twitched. Graham leaned back in his chair. Why are you being so formal? Because you're building a case against me. That's why. I kept my voice soft. Because clarity protects everyone. If there are performance issues, I need to understand them specifically so I can address them. Evan slid another paper forward, a performance improvement plan. My signature line was highlighted in yellow. They wanted me to sign that I agreed I was the problem. I didn't touch the pen. I'll review this with counsel, I said. Graham's voice hardened. Now, Diane. I looked him in the eye. No. Silence landed heavy in the small room. Evan's smile returned, too bright. It's standard procedure. I turned the paper slightly and read the bottom clause carefully. Failure to meet expectations may result in immediate termination. There it was. The trap. If I signed, I was admitting fault. If the expectations were impossible, which they would be, they could fire me for cause and avoid severance. I slid it back without signing. I'll respond in writing within 48 hours, I said. Amanda's lips parted like she wanted to protest, but couldn't find the words. Graham stood abruptly. Fine, but don't expect special treatment. Special treatment? I walked out with my head high and my hands shaking only when I reached the bathroom stall. I didn't cry. I breathed, slow, controlled. Then I washed my face and looked in the mirror. You don't lose like this, I whispered to myself. My reflection stared back, tired but defiant. When I returned to my desk, my calendar was full of meetings I hadn't accepted. All scheduled by Evan. It was wall-to-wall meetings labeled vendor sync, process transfer, operational review, all hosted by Evan. I realized what he was doing, keeping me too busy to do real work, then blaming me for falling behind. I declined 2 meetings and wrote back. I'm prioritizing deliverables aligned to my role. Please confirm which tasks are highest priority. Evan replied within minutes. All tasks are priority. We're a team. Classic. So I started a spreadsheet on my personal laptop called Task Requests. Every request, every date, every response, every impossible deadline. At 3:06 p.m., Evan walked by my desk and stopped. You're tracking tasks? He asked, sounding amused. Yes, I said. It keeps everyone aligned on expectations. He laughed. You really can't help yourself, can you? I smiled politely. Neither can you. His grin faltered slightly. That was the first time I saw it. Not confidence, insecurity. He was 24 years old, handed a role he hadn't earned, surrounded by people who knew he didn't deserve it, and he was terrified someone would notice. I went back to my work and Evan walked away. That evening my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. I answered cautiously. "This is Diane." "Diane, it's Carla from Midwest Supply." My chest tightened. Carla was our largest supplier. I'd negotiated with her for months. Her voice was tight. "Why did Evan tell us you're no longer authorized to speak for the company?" My hands went cold. "He said that?" Carla sighed heavily. "He called this afternoon and asked to reset terms. He implied you were emotional during negotiations, that the company needed a more stable point of contact." Emotional. That word men use to dismiss women's competence. My throat tightened. "Carla, I'm still here. I'm still employed. Please forward me any emails you receive from him." Carla hesitated, then her voice softened. "Diane, I'll do it because you were honest with me when no one else was. When you couldn't pay on time, you called me yourself. You didn't hide. I respect that." When I hung up, I stared at my screen. Evan wasn't just taking my job. He was trying to erase my credibility so I couldn't leave and compete, so vendors wouldn't trust me if I went somewhere else. This was character assassination. I forwarded the call details to my personal email, then drafted a message to Evan and Graham. "Please confirm my authorization level for vendor communication in writing, as there appears to be confusion externally." Professional. Calm. Documented. I hit send. 10 minutes later, Amanda from HR appeared at my desk, her face pale. "Diane, can you come with me? Right now." The walk to HR felt like the walk to the principal's office when you've done nothing wrong. Amanda shut the door behind us. Her voice was gentle, but her hands were wringing together. "We received a complaint." I held perfectly still. "From who?" She glanced down at her desk. "Evan." "Of course." Amanda slid a paper across the desk. I read it slowly. "Diane Moore is undermining new leadership by contacting vendors without approval and creating confusion about chain of command." I blinked slowly. "I didn't contact them. They contacted me, because Evan told them I was unauthorized." Amanda hesitated. "Evan says you're trying to confuse lines of authority." I leaned forward slightly. "Amanda, pull my call logs, pull my emails, pull the vendor emails. I want everything on record." Amanda looked overwhelmed, caught between doing what was right and doing what was safe for her job. I softened my voice. "I'm not trying to burn anything down. I'm trying to protect my name." She swallowed hard, then nodded. "Okay?" I watched her type, her screen reflected in her glasses. Then her face changed. A tiny lift of her eyebrows. Her typing stopped. "What?" I asked quietly. Amanda didn't answer right away. Then she said very softly, "Evan sent an email to the vendor first, this morning." She turned her monitor toward me. The email had my name in it like a warning label. Evan's email to the vendor read, "Please note Diane Moore is no longer authorized to negotiate or communicate on contract terms. Direct all future contact to me regarding operational matters. Thank you for your understanding during this transition." No transition discussion with me, no explanation. Just a clean severing of my professional relationships. My chest tightened with a familiar feeling. They weren't just demoting me, they were isolating me. I kept my voice calm. "That email damages my professional reputation with a key vendor." Amanda nodded slowly. "I see that." I looked at her carefully, really looked. Amanda wasn't evil. She was trapped in the same system I was. "I want a correction set," I said. "Today." Amanda hesitated. "I can recommend it to Graham." "Recommend," I repeated, tasting the weakness of the word. Then I did something that surprised even me. I stood. "Then I'm documenting that you saw this email and acknowledged it misrepresents my current status." Amanda's eyes widened. "Diane?" "I'm not threatening you," I said softly. "I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." I walked out, my legs steady, even though my insides were shaking. Because here's the truth. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was awake. When I got back to my desk, my phone was ringing. The bank's number flashed on the screen. First State Lending, our primary lender. I answered carefully. "Diane Moore." The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. "Miss Moore, this is Patrick Reynolds from First State Lending. We're conducting a routine review of your company's credit line." Routine. My stomach dropped. Reviews weren't routine for companies that had almost defaulted 18 months ago. Patrick continued, "We have some concerns about recent leadership changes. We need updated operational projections and compliance documentation. I closed my eyes for a second. Because those projections? I built them. Those compliance files? I created and maintained them. I kept my voice steady. Who specifically requested the review? Patrick paused briefly. Mr. Pierce, Graham, and his new operations lead reached out to introduce themselves. It raised some questions on our end about operational stability. Evan. Of course, Evan would try to look impressive by contacting the bank, not realizing he'd just triggered an alarm. I took a breath. Patrick, I can provide accurate current documentation within 48 hours. Patrick's tone softened slightly. We'd appreciate that, Miss Moore. And Diane, off the record, your name was on every positive note in our file from last year's recovery. My eyes stung. Thank you. I whispered. That night, I worked until midnight, compiling everything the bank would need. Then Evan sent a company-wide email that made my blood run cold. The message hit my inbox at 9:47 p.m. Subject: Organizational updates. Team, as we continue to streamline operations, Diane Moore will be transitioning out of her current role by end of month. Please join me in thanking her for her contributions. We're excited about the future. Transitioning out. No one had told me, no discussion, no timeline, just a public declaration. My phone immediately lit up with texts. Jenna, are you okay? What is happening? Miles from IT, this isn't right. Even Carla the vendor, call me when you can. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the message, hands wrapped around tea that had gone cold. Transitioning out, they were making it look like my choice, like a mutual decision. I called Marissa again. They're pushing hard, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Marissa's voice was firm. Good. That means they're scared you won't go quietly. Diane, we need leverage. Leverage. I thought about the bank review, the vendor emails, the HR documentation, the task spreadsheet, and one other thing, the complete bankruptcy rescue plan I'd built 2 years ago. The one that included risk disclosures Graham never wanted written down because they made him look bad. I'd kept copies. Personal copies. I opened my laptop and pulled up archived files, meeting minutes, documented approvals, emails where Graham had explicitly agreed to strategies he now wanted to erase from history. My finger hovered over the folder. I heard Marissa's voice. Don't use it unless you have to. But have it ready. The next morning, Evan called me into his office, my old office, and shut the door. Evan leaned back in my former chair like it had always belonged to him. Diane, he said, I want this to be smooth for both of us. I folded my hands in my lap. So do I. He smiled like we were co-conspirators. Look, if you help me with the bank review and get these vendor relationships transitioned cleanly, I'll make sure you get a strong recommendation letter. A recommendation. Like that could replace my salary. Like that could pay my son's tuition. I kept my voice even. You announced I'm leaving without discussing it with me first. Evan shrugged casually. It's just business, Diane, nothing personal. Then he slid a paper across the desk. A severance offer. I read it carefully. It wasn't terrible, it wasn't good, but it was a clean exit. Money to survive for a few months while I found something else. For half a second I felt the relief of it. Like maybe I could just walk away and breathe again. Then I read the clause at the bottom. Non-disparagement agreement. Non-compete clause. No contact with current vendors or clients for 24 months. 2 years. He wasn't buying my silence. He was trying to cage me professionally. I looked up slowly. No. Evan's smile thinned. Don't be emotional about this. My stomach turned to steel. Evan's phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced down, and his face changed completely. We have a problem, he muttered. Evan stood abruptly, walking to the window. I followed his gaze. Down in the parking lot, 2 people in business suits stepped out of a dark sedan. My heart hammered. Who is that? The bank, Evan said, trying to sound casual. They want to meet the leadership team. Leadership. He turned back to me and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Diane, he said quietly, you should come to this meeting. I almost laughed. Yesterday he announced I was leaving. Today he needed me to look stable for the bank. Why? I asked. Because. He swallowed. Because they asked for you specifically. We walked downstairs together in tense silence. Patrick Reynolds, the banker I'd spoken to, shook Graham's hand first, professional and cool. Then he turned to Evan. Mr. Pierce, Patrick said neutrally, we'll need to review your operational compliance documentation. Evan nodded too quickly. Absolutely. We have everything organized. Patrick's eyes slid to me, and his expression warmed slightly. Miss Moore? Thank you for making time on short notice. Graham's mouth tightened. Evan's face flickered. For a moment I thought, this is it. This is where they finally see who actually matters. But then Patrick added, his voice cooler. We also received a concerning call from one of your major vendors about contract confusion and communication breakdowns. We need clarification today. Graham's eyes snapped to Evan. Evan's smile faltered completely. Patrick looked at me. Miss Moore, can you explain the current vendor situation? Graham turned to me, his voice tight. Diane, explain why the vendor thinks you're still running things. I felt the room tilt slightly. They were using me as a shield again. In a calm, clear voice, I said, the vendor was confused because Mr. Pierce sent them an email stating I was no longer authorized to communicate with them. However, they had ongoing contractual obligations that legally required my sign-off under the terms of our previous agreement. I held Patrick's gaze steadily. I can provide the email chain if needed. Silence stretched across the conference room. Patrick nodded slowly. Please do. Send it directly to me. Graham's jaw clenched visibly. Evan stared at the floor. Then Evan cleared his throat, trying to recover. We're streamlining communication channels. Diane has been somewhat resistant to the new structure. There it was, the spin. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show anger. I just said quietly, I asked for my authorization levels to be clarified in writing. I haven't received that clarification yet. Patrick's expression cooled further. Mr. Pierce, we'll need a formal chain of authority document by end of business today. Our risk committee requires clarity on operational oversight. Graham forced a laugh that sounded hollow. Of course, we'll have that for you. I saw the sweat line forming at Evan's temple. For a moment, I thought maybe this would end with the bank forcing them to keep me in my actual role. But then Patrick added something that changed everything. Also, our risk committee is reviewing your credit line. Until these issues are resolved, we're implementing a spending freeze on new contracts. Spending freeze. Graham's face went pale. Evan's mouth opened like a fish. That night, Graham called me. His voice was shaking. Graham didn't sound like a boss anymore. He sounded like a man watching his empire crack. Diane, he said, I need your help fixing this bank situation. I stared at my kitchen wall, feeling the weight of the moment. I can fix it, I said quietly. But not like this. Not while I'm being pushed out and blamed. Graham swallowed audibly. What do you want? There it was, the question he'd never asked before. I want my title and pay restored, I said calmly. Or I leave with proper severance and a neutral reference, and Evan stops contacting vendors with false information about my authority. Silence stretched. Then Graham exhaled sharply. That's extreme, Diane. Extreme. Saving his company from bankruptcy wasn't extreme when it benefited him. I kept my voice level. It's fair. He hesitated, and I heard another voice in the background. Evan, whispering urgently, don't give her anything, she's bluffing. Graham lowered his voice. We can discuss this tomorrow in person. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he'd finally see reason. Then Graham added, his voice hardening slightly. But Diane, if you don't help us with the bank, we may have to consider your employment status immediately. A threat. Even now, backed into a corner, he wanted control. I smiled sadly to myself. Okay, I said. Then I'll communicate through HR and my attorney going forward. I ended the call. The next morning, HR emailed me. Please report to conference room A at 10 a.m. Company counsel will be present. Conference room A smelled like printer toner and desperation. A lawyer I'd never seen sat at the table, not our usual counsel, someone new. Expensive looking. Amanda from HR sat beside him, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Graham sat stiffly at the head of the table. Evan sat beside him, his earlier smugness replaced with tight anxiety. The lawyer slid a document toward me. Ms. Moore, he said smoothly, we're offering you a separation agreement, effective immediately. Immediately. My pulse stayed calm, but my mind raced. They were trying to fire me before I could respond to the bank's requests, before I could prove my value one more time. Evan leaned forward. It's really best for everyone, Diane. I didn't touch the paper. I looked at Amanda. May I ask what the stated cause for termination is? The lawyer said smoothly, performance concerns and cultural misalignment. Cultural misalignment. I almost laughed at the audacity. Then I said calmly, I'll need copies of all performance documentation referenced, as well as the bank's written requests for information, and I'll be responding through my legal counsel. Evan's eyes widened. Your counsel? I smiled politely. Yes, Marissa Chen from Wilson & Associates. The lawyer's face tightened almost imperceptibly. And then, like a miracle I hadn't dared hope for, Amanda spoke. Her voice shook, but she pushed forward. Before we proceed, she said, we need to address an internal compliance issue. Graham snapped. Amanda, this isn't. But Amanda kept going, her words tumbling out. We discovered emails sent by Evan to vendors misrepresenting Diane's employment status and authority. That created potential liability exposure with our lender. Evan's face drained of color. Graham looked like he'd been punched. The lawyer closed his folder slowly, his expression shifting. Mr. Pierce, he said carefully, this changes our risk assessment significantly. Everything went quiet. Not dramatic quiet. The kind of quiet where adults realize a mistake has gotten expensive. The lawyer's voice was measured and professional. If you terminate Miss Moore now, knowing she was publicly misrepresented to vendors and lenders, you substantially increase the company's liability, especially with an active credit review in process. Evan stammered, That's not what I... The lawyer held up one hand. Stop talking. Graham's eyes darted between Evan and me, and for the first time in 2 years, I saw something I'd waited for. Graham realized his nephew wasn't just inexperienced, he was a liability. Patrick from the bank called that afternoon. Amanda put him on speakerphone, her hands trembling slightly. Patrick's voice was professionally cold. We've reviewed the documentation Miss Moore provided, as well as the communication issues raised by your vendor. We have serious concerns about operational stability and chain of command clarity. Graham cleared his throat. We have Evan managing operations now. Patrick interrupted smoothly. Our file notes indicate Miss Moore was the operational stabilizer during your recovery period. If she's removed from operational oversight, we'll need to reduce your credit line by 40%, pending a full review. Reduced by 40%. That would financially cripple them. Graham's face went gray. Evan's lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just sat there like a woman who'd finally been seen for what she actually was. Patrick continued, we need written confirmation of operational leadership and Miss Moore's role within 48 hours. After the call ended, the room stayed silent for a long moment. Then Graham turned to me, his voice breaking slightly. Diane, what will it take for you to stay? I didn't answer immediately, because this was the moment where women get labeled difficult for asking to be treated fairly. So I kept it simple. I'll stay, I said, if it's real this time. Graham nodded desperately. I want my title and pay restored, I continued calmly. My authority clarified in writing to all vendors and lenders, and clear boundaries, no after-hours expectations without additional compensation. Evan's face twisted. This is ridiculous. I looked at him gently, like he was a child learning a hard lesson. Evan, you wanted to modernize. This is what modern business looks like. Clear roles, documented authority, professional boundaries. He flushed bright red, unable to respond. Graham swallowed hard. And Evan's role? I didn't say what my anger wanted me to say. I said what my dignity required. Evan can keep a role, I said. But not over me. Not in operations. If he wants to learn the business, he can learn, under proper supervision. Evan sputtered. You can't just... The lawyer cut in smoothly. That's a reasonable proposal given the circumstances. Amanda exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. Graham nodded slowly, his pride visibly wounded but his practicality winning. Then he said it. Quiet, painful, honest. I was wrong. It wasn't a full apology yet, but it was the crack in the wall I'd needed. That evening, Evan made one last desperate move. He emailed the board of directors, copying Graham, trying to paint me as controlling and vindictive. But Jenna forwarded it to me with one line. He's trying to go over Graham's head. I found out because Jenna sent me Evan's email with a simple message. He's making it worse. Evan's email to the board painted me as resistant to change, controlling, and a potential risk to company culture. But here's what Evan didn't understand. When you save a company from bankruptcy, you don't just build systems. You build relationships. The next morning, Graham walked into the office looking 10 years older. "The board wants a meeting," he said quietly. "Today." We gathered in the conference room. Graham, Evan, me, and 3 board members on video. Evan spoke first, trying to project confidence. "I believe we need a clean break from outdated leadership approaches. Fresh perspective is critical for growth." One board member, Mrs. Halloway, who'd been on the board for 15 years, held up her hand. "We've reviewed the bank's concerns," she said coolly. Evan froze mid-sentence. Another board member added, "And we've reviewed vendor correspondence and HR documentation." Evan's eyes flicked to me, panic rising in them. Mrs. Halloway's voice was calm but lethal. "Miss Moore, do you have documentation of the operational recovery plan you implemented and the financial controls that stabilized this company?" I opened my folder. Organized, professional, undeniable. "Yes," I said. "Complete documentation with approval signatures." Graham stared at the table. Evan swallowed hard. For the next 20 minutes, the board reviewed everything. The near-bankruptcy situation 2 years ago, my vendor negotiations that prevented default, the compliance systems I'd built, the bank's explicit praise of my work, Evan's misrepresentation emails to vendors, the communication breakdown that triggered the credit review. When it ended, there was no dramatic shouting, just a simple devastating outcome. Mrs. Halloway said calmly, "Evan Pierce will be removed from operational authority effective immediately. He'll transition to a junior role under supervision, or he can accept a severance package." Evan's face went blank with shock. Then, even better. "And Mr. Pierce, Graham, your judgment regarding the situation is under board review. We're appointing Ms. Moore as interim chief operating officer while we assess executive leadership going forward." Interim COO. My throat tightened, not with revenge, but with relief. Graham looked at me, shame and gratitude tangled in his expression. Evan stood so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "This is completely unfair." Mrs. Halloway's voice didn't change. "No, Evan, what's unfair is replacing competence with nepotism and expecting no consequences." Evan left the room without another word. And the sweetest part? I didn't chase him. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate loudly. I won quietly, with documentation, with patience, with dignity. 3 months later, after the company fully stabilized and the bank renewed our credit line with favorable terms, I made my choice. I didn't stay forever, because I hadn't saved them to belong to them. I'd saved them because I'm the kind of woman who finishes what she starts. I negotiated a clean, generous exit package and launched my own operations consulting firm, helping struggling companies fix what pride, nepotism, and poor judgment break. On my last day, Jenna hugged me tightly. "You didn't just survive this, Diane. You taught us all something." I walked out of that building with my head high, my reputation intact, and my phone already buzzing with new clients. And the sweetest revenge of all, I didn't need their approval anymore. I had proven my worth to the only person who truly mattered, myself. End.